gets all the control and it renders it its own way, and then if it's a server side, the server does all of the like HTML?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, HTML works on what kinds of devices? I should say, in this, when we're talking about HTML, what really is my client?
Browser.
It's a browser, right? It's not a native app. Usually, like iOS views or Android views, they're not usually run on HTML. They have their own systems. Like iOS, you can like drag and drop things into place and style them with your views. It's not running on HTML. And so this client-side rendered setup has become more and more popular, and they call it a REST API. Has anyone seen any job descriptions that mention REST or REST API?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty common. The concept of REST API, of a REST API, is that your server only sends data. That's its whole job, is to get data and send data. What's really nice about this is I can build my server once, and then I can access data from an iOS device, an Android device, Windows phone. Just kidding, nobody uses those. Like an iPad or a web browser or a native app, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. All of them know how to read JSON, and my API just sends JSON data. So I can build my server once, and if I want to build a web app and an Android app and an iPhone app, I can do that and just keep using the same server. The endpoints are all the same, right? And then you can have weird combinations too, where you can build your server is part REST API and part server-side rendering like HTML pages, but we're going to be using pure REST APIs for the entirety of this course. When we build our servers, it will always be a REST API. Okay, and yeah, so it's a complete disconnect between the server doesn't care how you use the data, it just gives it to you. Well, that leaves us with an interesting dilemma, because the way that we used to go from the home page to the about page was by doing a GET request to /about, and the server would send an HTML page and we would just display it. But now we have a dilemma, because all we're getting back from the server is JSON data. So we need a way to transition from one view, like the home view, to a different view, the about view. And so this is where the idea of a single page application comes into play. And that's often called the SPA, single page application, which is why I chose this picture, because it's a SPA. Look at that. So single page applications work like this. It doesn't mean that it's a single page as in you just scroll to see everything, right? It doesn't mean that you start at the top and you scroll up and down and you never get sent to a different place. What it really means is that the client, the site that you're on, renders once, and then it swaps out parts of itself. It never actually redirects you to a different HTML page. It's all really happening on index.html. And so when we do something like put a nav bar up at the top, and let's say a footer down at the bottom, and then we have this section in the middle that we want to change views on, right? If they click home, then I want it to be a home page. And if it's about, then I want it to be an about page. And so I built this little GIF that I think kind of explains it pretty well right here. This is really what a single page application is doing. When you click onto from the home page to the about page, it just it just like really swaps out that center. Now this shows an animation of it sliding. You could probably make that happen, but that's not part of this. This is just so that it's obvious that it's switching. And that's really what it does. It's like a puzzle, and you pull out a middle puzzle piece and stick in a new one, which is not a great analogy because you can't do that with puzzles. That's the purpose of it.
So it's like it's just redecorating the same page kind of over and like on depending on where you want to go. So like it redecorates for the about page if you're on the home page, kind of like the virtual DOM thing.
Yeah, that's partly there. The word decoration makes it sound like it just styles it differently, but I think what you're saying is it actually completely replaces, it rips out that original part and puts in a completely new page, like a new component.
Okay.
So, and then it would do this for all of the different page views that you have. And this is a really common example for this because usually you want your nav bar to be everywhere on your site. Same with your footer. You want your footer to be everywhere on your site. And then the center section is what actually will be swapped out. And so what's happening is React, when we're using React, is it will say there's a navbar component, and then we're going to use another component that says if they're at /home, then I want this section to be the home component. Okay, but if they redirect to /about, then what I want you to display there is instead an about component. And same with contact or something like that. Do a contact component. Does that make sense? It's going to swap it out. Okay. So I am going to I'm going to do just a little bit of setup, and then I'm going to have you do a create React app and then get to the same point, okay? But just for now, just pay attention. Creating one of these. React does not come with React Router. In fact, React Router wasn't written by Facebook. It was a third-party app that was actually written by a couple of contributors here in Utah. One of whom's name is actually Michael Jackson, believe it or not. And he's actually a really big deal in the community, kind of like the real Michael Jackson. So I'm going to say npm install --save react router DOM. The only reason DOM is here, it used to just be React Router, but then they started including React Router with React Native for compiling React to mobile phones, mobile devices. And so they separated the DOM version and the native version to its own thing. So I'm installing React Router DOM. And with React Router DOM, I'm going to receive a component that I'm going to use. Right here, we're rendering app. In order to basically set my application up to be a single page application, I'm going to import a component called browser router. And browser router is a component, and the way that you're supposed to use it is in this this paradigm, like this architecture or advanced, I don't know what you call it, but it's called the provider pattern. That's it. It's a React pattern, and it's called the provider pattern. And all that means is if I want my app to have access to the goodies of browser router, I'm actually going to create, like what I'm actually going to render is browser router. I'm going to wrap app in browser router, like that. So what I'm really rendering is an instance of browser router where inside of it is app. The reason this is a thing is because how do you pass stuff from parent to child in React? No?
Props.
Props. Yeah, you pass everything through props. And so browser router being the component that has all the goodies, you set it up as a parent of app, and it passes all of its goodies down to the components that are in app. Well, it passes it to app, but then it also passes it to all the children of app. It does all that for you. And so by doing so, app is receiving props here. I'm just gonna go ahead and console log, wait, I gotta do it that way, props. Let's take a look at what props looks like. Okay, notice I'm not actually myself saying, hey app, you're receiving some kind of props, but notice that it is receiving props. Oh, no it's not.
What is the React tools would be a little easier to look at?
I wonder if that'll show it up. Okay, well, we'll see it in a minute. Oh, here it is. Past the children and history. Maybe it's because I'm not using it. Anyway, I promise you app is receiving props from its parents, which is not showing up here. So, oh, it's because you need a switch. You need a route in order for that thing to receive it. That's why. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So this is all I had to do for setting up browser router. One thing that people will often do is rename browser router to just router because it's easier and it looks better. So you can, one cool feature of importing and destructuring like this is I can say, yeah, it's called browser router in React Router DOM, but I want to call it router. So I'm saying, yeah, import browser router, but I want to call it router. So this is another common thing you'll see. Go ahead and create a React app, install React Router DOM, and set up your app to receive routing awesomeness from React
Practice.
What's that?
Just called router practice.
Sure. Yeah, router practice, router. Don't call your folder React Router DOM. But everything else should be mostly fine. Okay, so up in the URL bar, I'll have something like mycoolsite.com/, and that should be my home page. Okay, I want that to render the home page. If it says /about, I want it to render the about component in its spot. If it says /contact, I want it to render a contact component in its spot. And so from the code, right here, I have my nav bar, which will always show up. I have my footer, which will always show up. But I need to figure out a way to dynamically choose which component I'm going to render in the space here. Okay, this is where the switch component comes into play from React Router DOM. And so I'm going to import switch from React Router DOM. And I'm going to put a switch component right here. And why do you think it's called switch?
It switches depending on which it wants. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
Switch.
like a switch statement.
Like a switch statement, exactly. Yeah, that's where it comes from. That's where the name switch comes from, is because you have a switch statement, and a switch statement says if some variable is equal to, let's say a, like some value a, then do this. If it's equal to some value b, then do this. If it's equal to some value c, then do this. And a switch component does the same thing. Inside of switch, we're going to put another React Router DOM component called route. And this is like, don't let route and router be confused. And so I need to import route as well as switch. So I'm going to add route, switch and route from React Router DOM. And route is going to take 2 parameters to start. One is path, and path says, the switch says, okay, check all the routes, and if the current route is just a slash, meaning mycoolsite.com / with nothing else after it, then here's the component, which is my next prop I'm going to give it, that I should render. And I'm going to put the component I want to render if the path is /. Okay, does this component exist yet?
No.
No. So I'm going to import home from ./home. Create home.js. Quick do a home component, and like that. Okay, that's as if the path is /, meaning whatever comes after my base URL. I technically don't have a / here, but it just assumes / really means and then nothing, right? Nothing after that. Okay, I get home goes here. Okay, what if, how might I, actually, go ahead and get caught up to this point, and then I would like you, no, get caught up to this point, and then we'll do one more component, and then I'll have you build some stuff. Okay, I forgot to start the recording back up. The only thing that we've changed since I paused it was we added a route for about, and that was doing something weird where when I typed /about, it would still give me my home component even though it's /about. And so the fix for that is to say exact in front of path, because normally what path does is it tries to find any of the paths that start with what's inside the quotations. And because /about does start with /, it determined that that was the correct route. And so it rendered the home component here. So by putting exact, it has to exactly be a /, no more, no less, in order for the home component to render. And now /about works. Okay, so the steps that I assume you probably took is you probably created a couple more of these. So contact services, contact services. Okay, I just added 2 more routes to my switch.
You gotta change the path.
Yeah, the about.
Oh, yep, thanks. Contact services. I have to create those files. Contact.js, services.js. I'll just be a cheater. Contact services. And I should be able to go to /contact, and there's my contact component, /services, and there's my services component. Easy enough. So what's the purpose of a switch component in React Router?
It lets you swap out the content, kind of, or whatever. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, to swap out content. How many of the routes will get rendered at a given time inside of the switch?
just one.
Just one, yeah. What determines which of the routes will get rendered? The path.
URL. Or,
What does the path have to match? Like, what does path mean?
like the URL.
Yeah, it's specifically the part of the URL after, in our case right now, localhost 3000. When you deploy this, it'll be like boolsite.com/about/services/ whatever. Okay.
So you don't need exact except for the just single slash.
Exactly, yeah. I only need exact starting here because it's saying something that begins with / and all of these do begin with /, but like /contact does not begin with /about, so there's no conflict there. Okay.
Could you technically put exact before each one of the paths if you're like being nitpicky?
You could, but we're going to see why that's going to cause a problem with services. So yeah, you could, but it might cause some weirdnesses. Because what we're going to do is in our services component, we're going to have another nested level of switch where we have the ability to go to something like /services/lawn care or /services/drain cleaning or something like that. Okay, but if I put exact here, if I wanted to go to /services/lawn care, this would not render because it's not exactly /services. It's /services/lawn care.
Oh, I see. Cool.
Okay, all is good. Let me take some needed time to pretty this just a little bit. Oops. And this should probably be a nav. Is that what I called it? Last time mapper, yeah. Let's give it a width of 100%, height of 70 pixels. Background color of something kind of gray. How do I get a gray? Oh, there we go, straight towards the center. Let's do like that. I think this has a margin top on it. Yeah, it's got a little margin around it. So that's 50. Let's do something like that here. I'm not going to worry about this class name because I actually don't need it. And let's actually give the same styles to the footer. Okay. Why is this one smaller?
Maybe because it's in a nav tag.
Maybe. Something about nav that like makes things smaller. Oh yeah, nav like gives it a little bit smaller font size. That's interesting. Curious, very curious. Okay. Beautiful site. It's looking pretty good. Proud of that. Show that off to the family.
I made a zebra.
Made a zebra.
Zebra. Sorry.
Okay. So I just wanted there to be some distinction so that we can kind of see what happens when we create subroutes for our services page. So before we get to the subroutes of services, I want to be able to not have to make the user type /about/contact/services in the URL bar. And there's a problem with me simply using an anchor tag, in that an anchor tag will either allow me to redirect to a new HTML page or allow me to send them to a part of the page that has a different ID. However, by default, it won't just change the path up at the top without trying to do something else. And so we're going to change the, we're not going to use an anchor tag, but instead we're going to use the React Router link tag. Link is intended for if you want to change the path so that the switch, like the routes actually change. Okay, so I'm going to import link from React Router DOM. And we're going to create a link component. And this one does have a closing tag, a separate closing tag. What do you think it is that goes in the middle?
Is it kind of like an anchor tag? So like the new URL maybe?
Yeah, the text that you actually want to show up on the page. Just like an anchor tag. So I'm going to say home, about, contact, services. And this is broken right now because we're not done. Okay, the one property that I definitely have to put in my link is where do I want it to link to? So there's a prop actually called to. And what do you think these four need to match? Or what do you think these need to be?
The URLs of those different pages.
Yeah, they need to match the paths. Where's my app? They need to match the paths of my routes.
Okay.
And so over in that bar, I'm going to add slash about, slash contact, slash services. And then I'm going to go ahead and style this. So get to this point where you have in your nav bar, you have some link tags with their associated to props. Is that all? I think that's all we changed. And I did some styling. You're welcome to spend some time styling if you want to.
Are you supposed to keep them capitalized with their components? Like files, something like that?
These are not components. This is the text that's showing up on the screen.
Links, not that link.
This link here,
No, to statement.
this is not a component. This is a prop. And all props are always all lowercase.
No, I understand.
Oh.
Within the two, there's a, yeah.
Yeah, typically URLs don't have capital letters in them, so you'll keep it all lowercase by convention. I'm also going to make this flexbox.
So can you select those in CSS, like just with link?
No, because deep down they're anchors.
Okay.
You would. I guess you could select anchor tags inside. You might be able to add a class name to it. Let's find out.
Yeah, our class name worked for me.
Class name worked.
Yeah, that one worked.
Oh, you can also provide an inline style. There's using styled components. Yeah, so I suppose you could just use a class name on it. Let's see what it looks like in here. Yeah, so it renders to an anchor tag. So you could also just select the anchor tag, do like header, direct child, anchor, or something. Like that. But I like the idea of doing it in class name too. Let's get these margin right of 10 pixels. 20 pixels. White smoke. It's too hard to see. That's pretty ugly. And let's not make this margin right. Let's make this padding right. And let's make it padding. 10 pixels. And let's have this be centered.
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
what does the greater than sign do? I have never seen that before.
This is a direct child selector, so it says look at the header element and then select all of its direct children.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Why do I still have spaces on top and bottom there? Oh, that's the top and bottom padding. Let's go 10, 0 top and bottom, 10 on left and right. Oh, nope, that's not right. Oh, let's do stretch. That's what I want. Yep.
I have a small issue regarding rendering my app. I don't know if it's caught up in the index or what. It's not finding the value. Wait, just try.
You get a slightly lighter gray to use for my Oh yeah, that's nice. Look at that.
Oh, so nice. 383736.
I ever half heavy jealous of this.
Right? Okay. Okay, enough of the styling. Sorry, I get so caught up. I actually really like styling, but I'm not like an amazing designer, but I like having fun with it. So, okay, I should be able to click any of these components and look at that. Get awesomeness. Get to switch between the two. Okay, so that's the link tag. The link tag is going to replace anchor tags. Anytime you want to send somebody to a different path, you'll use a link tag. And yeah, just like that. Are there any questions so far? So Jordan, what does a switch component do?
Asks which route you want to take pretty much.
Yeah.
So check your path. If you're on the right path, say go to home or about your services.
Yeah, and you kind of covered both the switch and the route. Okay, so tell me the difference between switch and route. What do you put? Well, that's a really contrived question. Where am I? Styles app. Here, a switch will render how many routes at any given time?
One.
Just one. Yeah. And Jared, what does a route component do?
Well, it kind of tells you which path you're gonna take and which component to render.
That's all it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It says, it's kind of like saying, route says, I'm actually going to become one of these components. And the switch says, I'm going to decide which of those components will actually get rendered. Okay, so you'll have one switch here and a bunch of routes. And there's nothing to say that you can't have another switch, okay, and put stuff inside. Now, what would I put inside of this switch?
So would this be like a page where you want like two moving parts, I guess?
You could. This might be a strange way to set this up because you're going to have, you're going to need the paths to be identical down in this switch. But if you, for some reason, wanted, like when you did /about, there was something on top and something on bottom, both of which render on the about page, but for some reason somewhere else you want to use that bottom component somewhere else, you technically could do that. What's even more common is to have a nested switch statement, okay, or not statement, but a nested switch component. And that's what we're gonna do now. Okay, so I'm gonna take that back out. And over in services, let's say what I want to show up is a list of services like lawn care and, you know, toilet cleaning and pet walking, dog walking, and I don't know, something else. And what I want to happen is when the user clicks on one of those services, it displays below a list of information about that service, like the cost and the title, like I don't know, whatever else I want. It's information about that service. Okay. So I'm going to go to my services component. And instead of having an H1 that just says services go here, I'm going to actually put something here. So let's say div. And now what I want, I have to plug this in again. This walk-on tablet, I think, has seen better days. It's really struggling. Okay, so I'm going to have, it's going to say services. And I don't know, we'll make it really simple. Let's say I have a service here, and a service here. And when I click on one, I want that information to show up down here. When I click on another, what do you think will happen?
That information will be replaced.
Yeah, this information will go away, and the information for that service will replace it. Okay, same with that. When I click the third one, the information that used to be there will go away, and this new one will show up. Okay. Someone walk me through this. This is my services page. I have a div.
Switch.
Okay, so I'm going to import switch. Why do I need a switch?
Are you gonna put a switch on this actual page?
Mhm.
Like, and okay.
Oh, not the right kind of switch.
Exactly what I was doing.
Okay, and what's going to go in switch? Like this?
Yep. A link.
So this
Two.
self-closing. Okay, what props do route? Does route get?
Two.
Path.
Yeah,
Okay, well, what's my path?
Services.
No, it would just be slash. Which one is slash?
whatever.
Slash services, right?
Right, so exact path.
So remember, this services component is only going to be showing up on the page if the current path is or starts with /services.
So would you want it to be like slash services slash whatever service you're talking about?
Exactly. So I have to start my path with /services because when I click a link, I don't want it to completely get rid of my whole services component because then I won't have anything to display at all. And so I need to make sure to start with /services.
And then a slash.
And then a slash. And then I want it to be the current service.
Dog walking.
They haven't clicked on a service yet, though.
Right. Yeah, we decided to start with the switch statement. Yeah, so we don't have a link yet that will change to dog walking.
But we don't know which one they've chosen, so wouldn't you want to just display nothing at the bottom of the page yet?
Now we're setting up.
We can, yeah. Yeah, so we could, so you're saying have a route
That's just a slash.
that's,
Yeah.
so, like that.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure, we could do that. Or I think if the path doesn't match any of the routes, it won't display anything.
No.
So actually, I think that the default will be like this. Yeah. Now, what am I missing on my route? A component to display. Okay, what's my component going to be? Okay, so I could have a separate component for every service that I'm going to make. Or I could have one component who receives information through props about the service that we're providing. Okay, then this leads me to some weird ground, okay, because yes, I could do this, boom, boom, boom.
Then you have to make a bunch of components.
Toilet cleaning. Yeah, and toilet cleaning component. But yeah, these components are basically going to be exactly the same, right? They're going to have all the same structure and they're going to have the same tags, and I'm just going to be copying and pasting different code into there. So this is where these components should probably be receiving props of some kind. And so this is kind of where we get into ambiguous territory because there's a lot of ways to do this, but I'm going to show you one of the most common ways to do this, okay? I'm not going to create a bunch of routes for these. Instead, I'm going to create a component called service detail. And it's more generic that way, right? And then I'm also not going to hard code dog walking here, but I'm going to do a trick that lets me put variables into my path here. And if I provide a colon says the path is not literally going to be /services/ something like colon, service ID, something like that. React Router will say, okay, it's not literally if the path includes a colon as part of the URL, but rather if it starts with /services/ and then something. Okay, the colon turns this part of my URL into a variable. It says, I don't know what's going to come after /services/, but it's going to be something. And if it's /services/ something, then I want to render the service detail. And then what we're going to do is inside of service detail, we're going to have access to whatever that /something was. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. Go ahead and get caught up to this point. Does anyone need time? I don't know if you guys are following along or if you're just watching.
I'm caught up already.
Okay.
I was just watching.
Okay, so let's take like 2 minutes, get caught up here. Services, all we really did was add a switch with the route. I don't think so. No, app. No, everything else is the same. So I've imported switch and I've included, oh, what else do I need? What else am I missing here? Route, right? I'm only importing switch, but I'm also using route, so I need to import that.
Do you have to import service ID then too?
No, because it's not a component, so you don't have to import it.
Service detail is not defined.
Yeah, we're not quite to that.
Are we going to define it in a new page or?
Yeah, we'll be creating a new component.
So that component's basically going to be like all the services we offer, and it'll be dynamic to whatever they click on, like for the details, I guess.
Yep.
So we could have done this with the other switch statement as well.
Yeah, well, with how silly generic our like about page and everything is, we technically could have, but in real world practice, your about page won't have the exact same structure as your contact page and so forth. This is an example of like, remember we talked about YouTube and how you can kind of componentize these. They obviously didn't create a component for every single one of these. Like they didn't make a one of the best Seinfeld lines ever component and so forth. Instead, they made like a video tile component and passed the data to it. And then when you click on it, it changes the URL, and that goes and does some stuff. And apparently I was logged into the vSchool account when I went to Topgolf because I was slicing really bad. So I was like, how do I fix my slice?
Did you fix it?
I had a couple shots where they didn't slice. But I'd say a majority of them, I couldn't fix it in like 10 golf balls. So it wasn't super productive.
everyone good? You good, bro? I think we're good. You good? That's all up to Tom.
Sorry, I just need to.
Dang it, Tom.
I was supposed to have a pre-course
Oh,
interview and then
no.
I'm missing it now. So.
Make Eric do it, right? Oof, I don't know if you want that.
Hey Bob, did she not show?
She did. She's messaging me. I just was supposed to do it at 4 and I lost track of time.
Gotcha. Almost there, man. Thank you.
Okay, so service detail is undefined. Let's import service detail from / service detail, and then go ahead and create that. Service detail.js. And okay, yeah, so look at this. I clicked on services and I have nothing showing up anymore. Why is that? It's going straight from the header to the footer.
We haven't defined anything yet.
Yeah, what do I have displaying when the path is /services?
Service detail.
Not quite. This is displaying, this route will display on the screen when it's /services /something.
And there's nothing.
But when it's just /services, this will not display, and I have no like text or anything showing up here. So what else do I need?
You need like a default
So not necessarily just a default,
or
but
another route.
if anything I put outside of my switch will always display when this component is being rendered.
Links for a list.
Yeah, I do want links. In my little drawing, I had the word services like shown up here in the center. So I'm gonna put like an H2 that says services. And now I get my services back, okay? Anything that's outside of the switch is just always gonna be there. The stuff inside the switch will only show the correct path or the correct component if the path matches one of the routes. If the current path matches one of the path properties of the routes. But right now, because I'm at /services and I don't have like /something or other, it's like, yeah, that's not part of the path right now, so I'm not going to display it. Okay, and then like Ryan said, according to my little drawing, I wanted some links to show up here so that when I click them, it sends me to the correct one, right? So what do I do?
Links and
Yeah, I just put some links. And what do I need to do if I'm going to be using link? What do I need to do?
Import.
I need to import it, right? I'm importing switch and route. I also need to import link. Dog walking and lawn care and toilets unclogging. This is a good business.
It's a thriving business.
It's thriving. Okay, links all need what property? What prop? 2. I need to send them to somewhere. So let me send them to dog walking. And okay, there's a mistake here. Can anyone pick out what it is? It's not a typo. It's not a syntax error. It has to do with my links. And how to works. What happens with the to?
Should be services.
That's right. So right now, if I click one of these links, it's going to completely replace the whole /services thing with /dog walking. But my service detail component will only render when what's true.
Services first.
Yeah, when it has services first. So each of these needs to also start with /services. Okay, I'm going to do something that I tried to do before and it didn't work the way I thought it would. I'm going to console log props. Okay, look at what my component, my services component, is receiving as props. See all this information?
Yeah.
This is all part of React Router. React Router is passing these props down to my component. And there's some really interesting stuff here. Like, well, first off, props is an object. It has a property called location. And location has something called path name. I also have match.path, which is the same thing, match.url, which is the same thing.
It says is exact true on one of those. Is that an exact path?
I didn't set it up as an exact path, but what it's saying is that it does start with /services. I think if I add like 1, 2, 3. Oh no, that's not the same. /services /1, 2, 3.
Oh, I see. Now it's false.
Yeah, is exact is now false because it says, yeah, it's not exactly /services. And now it is true.
Hey, I have a small problem. Ever since we did like the brew uninstall yarn or whatever, now my page closed and I'm doing npm start or whatever, and it's not working.
Okay, do you want to share your screen?
Sure. So if I do npm start, it's bash npm not found. I don't.
It's interesting. Let me take control for a second.
Okay. Okay, npm start was working after I did the reinstall.
Yeah, you don't have npm anymore.
What? How is it gone? right, thanks. I don't know how that happened, but it works.
Okay. Anyway, so here we see props.match.url is my /services, right? Well, what would I have to do if for some reason I decided, actually, I don't want the URL to be /services. I want it to be like /service list or something like that. Okay, where else would I need to change this?
Everywhere.
Yeah, anywhere that the path is doing that. And so like in my nav bar, I need this to be /service list. And in my service detail, my services, I need all of these to say /service list, and so forth. And so a common practice is to say, I'm inside right now the /services, so I want this to start with whatever the current path is. And so what React Router recommends doing is using a template string and inputting props.match.url right there.
So is that just take your current URL and then adds to it?
Yep. Oh, and this needs a slash in front of it.
So wait, what is that for?
Oh, and this needs to be
So
JavaScript. Yeah, in order for the template literal thing to work, it needs to be part of JavaScript. And so I put the curly braces, backtick, and say /props.match.url. And that's going to be /services or /service list or whatever. What's nice about this is it's dynamic. So if I were to ever change it from / in my app to like service list, then inside of services, it's going to say, well, now props.match.url is /service-list instead. Yeah, it doesn't this doesn't affect the way we're doing it, but this is the way that React Router recommends doing it. So I'm still going to keep this to services, but in services.js, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my quotes. I'm going to surround this all in a curly brace so that I can use JavaScript-y things like the template literals. And then instead of services, I'm going to put props.match.url.
Is it typical that you go in and change names of stuff after the fact?
It's pretty common to like change your mind on stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe like down the road, if you're gonna add your website later, you might want to read things, see if you have a complete website.
Yeah.
You know, add more.
Okay. In my service detail, well, go ahead and make that change if you didn't already. Take just a minute to do that.
Are we doing anything after 5?
Well, you got a hot date?
No.
Yes.
I think I got a volunteer meeting. That's what's happened last week. Is happening this week.
Yeah. This will be the last material we covered today. I'm pretty sure.
If the school wanted to do a volunteer, they'd volunteer. Sorry, that was from my Air Force days.
I was waiting to be followed up with, do you like it? Or else. Volunteers go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to go to service detail. And oh, good, I have something. I have service detail goes here. Let me look at my page here. Now, when I click dog walking, these are ugly, huh? Oh, sorry. Click dog walking. Oh, I get an error. An error. Push state on history. History state object URL. Dog walking cannot be created. Version 3000. Why not? Hmm. Okay. Oh. It doesn't like my template string here.
Can I have like 1 second to make sure I have those links right when you're done?
Mhm. Ugh. Oh, it starts with /services and ends with a slash. If I just console log props dot match the URL, it's /services/.
So you don't need to add either of those slashes there.
Yeah, so neither of these need to be here. And that looks really weird. So let me look something up because connect router nested switch.
I think you should keep the slash after. Yeah. Slash after. Yeah, but no slash before, but the slash after. But no slash before.
Discussion. The switch component is terrible?
Yeah, mine works now. This is like slash after.
Mine's not even really in service detail.
Oops.
Web.
Can export it into.
Punish me. Punish me for my volunteering.
I'll make you.
Spots. Yeah. Service.
Params. Yeah, they do it right here. Oh, but yeah, they don't start with a slash. Okay, good. So I still want a slash here, like you said, right?
That's what you're saying. Still need it before.
Okay, good.
For some reason, it's not reading the file or the service ID or service detail. I mean, for the file, it's all over. Detail. So it seems having existing. Where's restart it?
So that works.
Oh,
Yeah.
just every now and then
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is what the problem was, that I had a slash before there. I was just making sure that props match URL is the one that React Router uses, which it is. So these are my URLs, and notice that when I click on them, it actually puts that in the top. So toilet-unclogging, lawn-care, dog-walking, and so forth. And notice that my service detail thing is showing up. If I get rid of the slash whatever and hit enter, it's gone, right? So I click one of those and now service detail shows up. And I'm gonna click here and look at my props and look at match. And I'm gonna look at params. Wait, so there's params. Precious. Did they change this? It's not showing up. Why is that not showing up? Oh, because this is from the outer component. Okay, let me go to, I'm going to go to service detail, and at the top, I'm going to console log props again. Because right now, all React knows is that I'm supposed to render service detail, right? A service detail component, but this component has no idea which service it is, because we decided to choose it so that, or make it so that there's one component that could handle any of the detail or the service details, right? So if it's toilet unclogging, dog walking, or lawn care, it's going to display the same component. And so we're kind of in a weird place, because like, okay, yes, my service detail is showing, but that service detail no longer has any connection to which service it is, or does it? Okay, let me uncomment, or let me delete these services. I put a console log of props in service detail, and I'm going to open this up. So I have props. I'm going to open up match, and what here do you see gives me some information about which service I'm wanting.
Params.
So there's props dot history, location, and match.
That the
What's that?
params.
Params. Yeah, look at this. So params is an object. And what's this right here?
Service ID.
Where's that coming from?
The props.
It's coming from props, but why is it called service ID?
Because that's the semicolon one or the colon one we set up, to where it's like whatever comes after this.
Yeah, remember I said the colon sets up a variable. It makes it so that it doesn't actually know what, or it doesn't literally look for a colon in the URL bar. Instead, it's /services/ something. Well, that something I can access on props.match.params dot whatever that variable name is. In this case, service ID. And notice that that's the string toilet-unclogging. And where's it getting that from?
Because that's a service we're trying to get.
That's the service we're trying to get. Why does it have a dash?
This is coming from the URL.
Yeah, it's coming from the URL. It basically says, give me the URL, and then I'm going to strip out whatever comes after /services/. Right? It says they wanted to save that as a variable, so I'm going to take that string and I'm going to save it in props.match.params.serviceID. What if I changed this to like dolphins?
Nothing would change.
Okay, I have props.match.params.dolphins.
Yeah, and toilet and clogging.
Okay,
dolphins.
toilet care, dog clogging, and lawn walking.
Dolphins are getting desperate, they don't have SeaWorld.
Yeah, they're getting stuck in our drains. Okay, so props.match.params, it's a little bit nested, right? props.match.params.serviceID, and if it's a class-based component, it's this.props.match.params.serviceID. So it's pretty crazy nested objects, but I now have a link between my service detail component and the outside world. Basically, like the service detail now has a way to know which, it has a way to know which information am I supposed to display.
But the first one always shows up whether you click it or not.
Sorry?
So when I refresh the page, dog walking is always there. And so then if I click lawn care shows up. So shouldn't we just have nothing until they click something? They want information about dog walking.
Oh yeah, so that's like that's when they get to the services page. When they click your nav bar and go to services.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what you mean. Nothing shows up here.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Wait, yeah. Why isn't my services showing up here? Oh, because I did this stupid service list thing. 1 second. That's the problem.
But when I'm on the services page and I hit refresh, it doesn't get rid of. Doesn't just go to the blank services page. It still has what was chosen before.
Does your URL bar still say /dog walking?
Or whatever was there before, yeah. Toilet unclogging.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing. Like if it says /dog walking and then they refresh, they probably should still be looking at the dog walking detail. Because the idea should be that I could now copy this link and send it to somebody, and when they click on it, they see the same information. Okay, so let's talk about a few things that we could do. What we're used to is our components receiving data through props, right? We have our data and we send that data down through props. Now that my service detail page has access to whatever is in the URL bar, a really common thing to do is to set this up as a class-based component, do a component did mount, and do an Axios call, and say, service detail just got rendered. We're going to do an Axios call and get the data from this one detail view of our service. Does that make sense? Which means that usually when you go to services, it would do a GET request to get a list of services that you offer from a server somewhere, like an API. And it would display a link for every one of those services. And then when you click on that service, it loads a service detail component, and that component goes and it gets the information for that one service. Okay, this is, you can do a get all or a get one, meaning I want to get all the services or I want to get a lot of detailed information about one of the services. When we write servers, that will be a little more clear. For now, we could fake this in a number of different ways. One thing I could do is make a JSON list, like a JSON file that has my services in it. And actually, that could be a good practice. So I'm just going to make like a data.json file and have it be an array of services. Say the price is, I don't know, $10 an hour. Is there other information? What else would I display? That's fine for now. What's that? Okay, this is just a data.json file. This is going to mock a database, like an API that I'm calling to. So I just hard-coded some data. And in React, something cool I can do is I can just import the JSON file. Have you guys done that at all? If you want to mock some data, you can set it up as a JSON file, and then I can say like import data from data.json. And now data is as if I had called out to an API with Axios and gotten data. Well, now that I have this array of objects, what can I do in my services component? The one that displays the list of items, the list of services I have.
You can make it to where whenever you click on one of the services, it shows you that data.
Okay, I could, yeah, we're gonna do that in service details since that's where it's showing the detailed information about that. What about my links? They're hard-coded right now. And if I add a new service to my my data.json file, is my service list gonna update my links? Yeah, so let's do a map. We just pulled in our data. Service links equals what? I have data is an array of service, like of objects that have a name and a price. Data.map. I'm gonna be looking at an individual service, and what is it that I want to return? Link. And what should be displaying inside the tags there? Oh, okay, yeah. So I need a prop to what?
Same as below, but it'll replace dot logging.
Yeah. So right now, all I have is this string, right? In service.name, dog walking. How might I do something here that lets me get it to be dog, like replace the spaces with dashes and lowercase everything?
Do service.name. And then, yeah, you have to like replace.
Could you replace?
And that's your lowercase.
Yeah, what if I said like, first let's lowercase everything. And then what if I split it on spaces and then join it with a dash. Okay, this is kind of ugly to have inside here, so I'm going to open up and say const, I don't know, yeah, path, that's good. Equals that, and then here I can just say to path.
Does you have to add the props match URL thing?
Oh yeah, for that, thanks. Okay, yeah. And I should get an array
for
of
path,
links.
I think you have to do $sign, code your base of that.
Oh yeah, thanks. Okay, and what that should have done is basically made it so that I didn't have to do these individually. What's the benefit of that?
It's dynamic for if you get another service.
Yeah, exactly. It's dynamic. If my business decides to add 2 or 3 more services, I don't have to go anywhere else and add things, right? I'm just getting rid of these links. Now, what am I missing in my link tag or my link?
The name of it.
Yeah, I need the name right here, right? So service.name. So I can get rid of these, and what do I put to make that? Yeah. Curly braces, service links. Let's see if this is still working. And look at that. Check the render method of services.
Let's just add keys.
Unique key.
Everything
Oh,
has
yeah,
stuff.
unique key. Let's give it a key of path is probably fine. Should be unique. Yeah. Okay, and look at that. Oops. Right there, I'm hovering over dog walking, and see that? It says dog dash walking because I lowercased it, and then I turned it into an array split on the space, and then I joined it back into a string with a dash in between everything. Toilet dash unclogging, lawn dash care. And I have service links. Okay, and this would be like right now I'm just importing data, but you could also just as easily turn this into a class-based component and link and do a GET request on component did mount, right? No, we're just about done. I think there's an assignment. There's just check Slack for the assignment.
Is it okay if I do it back here? Or should I go?
I think so. Okay, so then the last thing is I get to my service detail page, and because we don't have an API set up with these services, although that would probably be a good API for me to set up for this example. I could do something like import my data. And do, gosh. This might be a good time to do component will receive props actually. Because my thought is I can save, oh, actually, do I need to do that? Yeah, I need to do that. I could technically say, okay, let's look at props.match.params.service ID and then see if, and then loop through my data and pull out one where it's the same name and then display the stuff. Does that make sense? So like, I'd say like const, the service that is in question is going to be data.filter, meaning look at the array of data, and for every item there, if And actually filter, I should probably do find one, or find, I mean. If the item dot name dot to lowercase dot split, this is why APIs are nice, so I don't have to do it this way, dot join with a dash. If that equals props dot match dot params dot service ID, then this is the service I want. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
What this is doing? The reason is my service, like in data.json, doesn't have the dog dash walking in lowercase. So in service detail, I'm saying go do that, and if that's the same as what's in the URL bar, like right there, dog walking, then that's the item, that's the service that I want. And then here I might say something like service.name. Okay, so when it's dog dash walking, that's what it shows. When it's toilet unclogging, that's what it shows. Lawn care, and so forth. And then I might have an H3 that says price, service dot price per hour. And I need that to be in a div. Okay. 30 per hour, toilet unclogging, 20 per hour. Let's put a dollar sign there. Okay, so I know that was a lot to take in, and we went for a way longer time than I was anticipating.
The first part was pretty smooth. It started to get a little more confusing towards the end.
This is, frankly, this is the hardest part about React Router that you'll use is the subroutes and these URL parameters. Fortunately, once you start to understand these URL parameters, they'll make a lot of sense when we get into server-side code as well, because we do something very similar on the server where we have dynamic routes. Or dynamic API endpoints that also use a colon, and so this won't be like totally unfamiliar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip up this project and send it along. But let me do just a quick recap of all of these files that we have, or the important ones at least. Obviously, index is rendering app, but we've included router. The reason that we have router here is so that we can get things like props.history, props.location, and props.match. Right? We've been using match.url and match.params. If we didn't have router here, it wouldn't be able to pass on that critical information about the route and router. So we set that up. Then over in app, we introduced the switch component. The switch component says, choose one of these to display at this place. Okay, the nav bar is outside the switch, so it will always show the nav bar, same with the footer. The switch says, we're gonna just only render one of these routes, one of these components. And it's to determine which component it's going to render, it checks this path. And if the path in the URL bar starts with /about, then we're gonna show the about component. Same with contact and same with services. Hopefully, like the home, about, and contact are fairly straightforward because they're just plain old components. Okay, they're just displaying some random text right now. But then services goes a little bit deeper. So I get services.js, which sometimes I like to call it service list and service detail, like separate the idea of having a list of services and a detailed information about any one service. And services.js right now is importing my JSON data. Alternatively, what might I do if I have a server set up that's got this information in endpoint?
An Axios call?
Yeah, I would do an Axios call that says, go get me a list of the services that we provide. In my case, I don't have that API set up, so I just wrote the JSON hard-coded. And then I created a list of links so that it would display all of my services, like that. And the way I created those links was by mapping over my data. And I did this craziness so that I could make it show up the way the URL, it makes sense in the URL. Then I said, give me an array of links. I have a key since I'm mapping. I just put something unique in there. It should go to, and what does this evaluate to? Props.match.url?
Services?
Yeah, /services specifically. So the link should go to /services. And the reason I didn't hard code this,
You want to keep it versatile?
yeah, it's a little more dynamic if I don't hard code it, and then later in the future, I choose to change this from /services to like something else. I'm gonna go have to change all my links as well. This says, yeah, whatever you're at right now, that's fine, but tack on this path thing, which was like dog-walking, all lowercase, whatever. And then of course I'm displaying the thing inside the opening and closing link tag so that I can see it. And then I think the trickiest part, and this is where I'm displaying those links. The trickiest part comes right here. I'm saying, I want you to display the service detail component if the path is ever /services, and then someone explain this :service ID part to me.
Somebody else can do it actually.
It's not specific. It's anything after.
Yeah, it's like a variable. The colon says, and by the way, it's not literal. If I got rid of that, it would expect this part right here after the slash. It would expect that to literally be the string service ID. The colon says, I don't know what's going to be after there. I don't care. As long as there's something after there, /services /something, I want you to render the service detail component. Now, why is this important? Where does this come into play?
Comes into play when you're checking through the props or something like that. You're looking for the specific ID name.
Yeah, that's right. So over in the service detail, there's kind of like this weak link. It's like services will render service detail, but then service detail is born with very little knowledge of what it's supposed to be displaying. And there's one tiny thread that's connecting it to which service it should be, and it's that URL. Okay, it's that dog-walking in the top. I should also mention that oftentimes if I were getting this list from an API, each of those items would be given an ID. Do you remember doing the to-do app and you do a get request of all the to-dos and each one has a unique ID associated with it? Oftentimes, instead of doing this kind of magic to make it say toilet-unclogging, you would actually just have /services/ and then the ID number of whatever that service is. So it's a little less readable. Like if you were trying to just speak the URL to somebody, it would be a nightmare compared to this. But that's also a really common thing to do. So that
does that return it in like lowercase with dashes and stuff?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. Does that return it with like lowercase and dashes and stuff then if you get it from the API or whatever?
So the ID would be all lowercase. It would look like.
Oh, so it just returns ID. It does. Okay, I know what you mean.
It'd be like that super ugly ID from the To-Dos API. These down here. Yeah, like these here. So it'd be like /services /5A1C4C7, craziness. But just so you're aware, that's a common way to do this as well, instead of doing like the split and join thing that I've been doing.
So would that be your URL then? That ID, would that be in your URL, or would you be switching it to like whatever you wanted it to say?
It would, no, you're right. It would actually be in the URL.
Okay.
Like my link, instead of creating this path thing where I split and join the names of the dash, it'd be something like service._ID.
Okay. So then you'd probably in the end like want to somehow change the URL so or would you just leave that URL with that crazy ID in it? Wouldn't you want to?
It's definitely not as readable. I would probably just leave it with the URL because And that's actually a really common thing. Like if I go to Amazon and I say, yeah, I want these honest diapers, the URL is not like transmittable. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's craziness, right? I'm not going to read this off to somebody, but it's such common practice to just copy and paste it somewhere that it wouldn't be that big of a terrible site, or like it wouldn't be that big of a deal if my path were an ID instead that isn't as like readable.
Okay.
But there are ways to make it so that it displays the actual, like something that is more readable. Because it is nice to say like, hey, go to bobservice.com/services/dog-walking. Like that's much more transmittable by voice than if I had an ID. It would be ridiculous if I would do that. Actually, Airbnb just announced that they're going to start doing that for superhubs. I run an Airbnb. I have for like 3 years now, just in our basement, and they just announced like Thursday or something. Yeah, last Thursday, that they're going to start allowing superhosts to create their own URLs, custom URLs. So I don't have to say you can find my listing at airbnb.com/like 638157 or whatever my ID is.
BobsAirbnb.com.
Well, I don't get to choose my own domain, but it'll be airbnb.com/, like Bob's Airbnb.
/Bob's basement. That way it gets lots of people.
It's Bob's torture dungeon. So there's my links, and then yeah, this right here I think is probably the most difficult part. Like, if the path is ever /services/something, go to service detail. Service detail loads, and whatever method you end up needing to do, very frequently I mentioned like this would be a class-based component on component did mount. It would do an Axios call, and it would say, go do a GET request to the ID that is service ID, right? Go get me that information. Yeah. And then that way it knows to display. Here I kind of did a mock version of that. I said find in the list of data something where the item, the name matches the service ID, and then service, like display the name and price. But what I'll do is link this to you. I sent the write-up for React Router, which should be a good review, and it ties closely in with this. And there's actually 2 exercises with this, so this should keep you busy for a bit.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Did you still connect with Laura or no?
I'm just about to.
Okay, cool.
So I have to go downstairs and do a pre-course interview, and then I actually have to run after that. So if you have questions, hit me up on Slack. Oh, let me send this over to you.
Then I failed you, interviewer. Did you do? Okay, are you putting it on the Slack?
Yeah.
Did you do anything else well?
Review, recap of everything.